Benton here, also known as Movement Goddess. I am about to do a warm-up, a pre-surfing warm-up for my body. All day of surfing yesterday has left me feeling very stiff and achy, and these are some movements that seem to help me after surfing and before. Let's get started. So I'm going to start with actually on hands and knees, in all fours position. I'm just tracking the wrists underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips. I'm going to start by just feeling my spine elongate as long as possible. So I'm going to think of my tail and my pubic bone reaching really far back behind me, which kind of engages my low belly. And I'm going to think about the back of my head or between the ears, the inner ear, crown of the head reaches away from the tail. So when I create that movement, what I feel is this kind of down the back energy and an up the front. And that engages the deep core muscles of the spine. I'm going to check in with my hands and my elbows. I don't want to be locked out. Really want to be in the whole hand. I want to be feel some knee weight here. Shoulder blades, waterfall, lengthening the tail, lengthening through the inner ear, allowing the inhale into the side and the back ribs because the ribs get really sticky with surfing. And on the exhale, I'm going to keep that long spine. So I'm keeping energy down through the tail and energy out through the inner ear space, back of the head. On the inhale, my pubic bone is going to help lengthen the tail away from the head or inner ear space. And I just want to feel the movement of the head to tail, tail to head. Right, I'm going to feel some engagement through the back of my legs, so feeling that knee weight. If I need to walk my hands in a little closer to feel the load being shared between hands and knees. Rounding the spine can feel better as the spine's always an extension, but I do still want to practice extension with a long reaching tail and engagement through the front of the spine, right? Because we can really load a lot on the back to look up, and we really want to think about this lift or zip, helping exhaling. Shoulders waterfall, feel that weight share between the knees and the hands. And I'm really feeling the work back here as well, feeling the support of the lower glutes and the hamstrings through this movement, not just in the shoulders. Right? And then the next one is actually my favorite, is the side bending. So I'm going to inhale over to one side and exhale back to center. So what's happening is when I inhale to the right, I'm going to think of long reaching tail, a long back of the head, inner ear, and my hip and shoulder and ear coming towards each other, which helps me really feel the opening of the left side body. And you could either exhale or inhale. I like to inhale to open up the spine. Inhaling to the side. It's like the side of my tail and the side of my ear are trying to come together. I'm going to reach long through the tail, reach long to the back of the inner ear, back of the head. Bend my knees, bend my hands equally, back to center. Taking the breath into it with you, so like you have gills of a fish that are really spreading, opening that right side. It's not about closing the left. Back to center. Inhale, breathing, opening, or it could be an exhale, that side body. And there's a little tone as I reach back through my tail and my back of the head. So when I come to center, I'm still reaching in two directions of the spine. There's energy this way and energy this way as I go into side bend. so I feel a little bit of front spine core support. And then taking that into a rotation or a spiral. I'm going to go through flexion, extension, and side bend. So I can go to the side and drop the tail and feel that cat or flexion of the spine. When I go to the side, again, I want to think of energy out through the tail, energy out through the back of the head. There's my fish or lateral flexion. When I go into my cow, right, I'm not just sagging, right? I'm integrating, feeling the support through the back of the legs, feeling some spine support. So I'm going to go around in a couple directions, keeping the load equal in the knees and the hands. Then I'm going to reverse. I'm going to initiate with that reaching tail. That reaches back, then it scoops under. And I want my shoulders, my arms stay integrated. So instead of collapsing or over pressing, there's a neutral position. Exhaling. It's like you're making a spiral. I'm going to reach my pubic bone and tail away from the head. And now I'm going to keep a neutral pelvis here as I start to hinge. It's like a kneeling hip hinge. So I'm not going to round the tail. This is more for the hips. Right? So I'm going to feel a little tone through the back of the legs. My heels are kind of going back behind me. And the heel energy keeps going behind me as I come forward. And I can exhale. So I'm trying to feel the slide and glide of the head of the femur inside of the pelvis. So the movement's coming from the hip, not the spine. Right? And you're only going to go as far back as you can without curling. Right? So I can feel like your sit bones are reaching back and up slightly. Connecting to breath. Okay. And then if I want to take that into a rounded spine, I'll flatten my ankles here. And now I'll let the tail drop, bringing me into child's pose. Moving your surfboard out of the way. All right, so from child's pose, it is a resting pose, but I'm still connecting. I want to kind of feel a little bit of the energy of my shin weight connecting down, which will actually create a tone, a very subtle tone to pass up your body. And as you do that, you may feel more release of the tail and more release of the head. And really take this as an opportunity to breathe in these back ribs, which get really tight through extension. So whether it's surfing or any other type of activity that you extend your spine a lot, this is just a good counter posture. So feeling breath back here, that breath creates movement of the muscles in between the back of the ribs, so the intercostal. And then I can take that, walking my arms to the left side a little bit and breathing in the right side of the rib cage. So I want to feel the circumference of my ribs, my whole rib cage expanding, and I'll feel that a little bit more on the right side. And I'm being mindful not to lean my weight into the left. I'm keeping equal weight through my shins. And then as I walk my hands back over to the right side, what I'm not doing is leaning my weight. I'm keeping equal weight in my shins. I'm not overstretching. I'm just extending the arms, allowing opportunity for the left side of the rib cage to move and breathe. On the exhale, kind of imagine that energy like a waterfall pouring down your back all the way to the tail. And when you follow that energy all the way to your tail, you may feel a little lift through the pelvic floor, through the low belly. This little subtle energy that's happening. It's grounding force, ground reaction force. And now I'll walk back to center. I'm going to ground through my shins and knees to come back forward into all fours. And now I'm going to do a little bit of some foot opening. I'm going to cross the left foot on top of the right. I've done a lot of videos about the foot stuff. Any type of activity that I'm doing that requires me to have my bare feet on, I'm going to always do these foot postures. And then when I'm resting there, I want to just can my tail release, and I feel my head float from the deep spinal core muscles and fascia. So I'll say muscles, but there's an inner tone beyond the core muscles we think about. Breathing muscles, the diaphragm. So as I can weight shift if I need to. Add a little bit more pressure. If it's too much pressure, I keep weight forward. I'm going to come forward, switch what foot was on top. This foot may be a little more sensitive. I'm going to kind of check in if I need to reposition my feet, if I need to reposition my knees being wider or closer together to create a good angle and comfort, a little bit of comfort. I'm just kind of noticing what this side feels like. You can see me not settling as well on this side, and yep, it's definitely different. So I'm trying to find a place. So I may keep my weight a little bit forward. So I'm just noticing I haven't done this posture. I don't think I've done it in a couple days actually. So I've got a little something going on in my right ankle. It's just not opening in the way that my left side, right? So when our ankles and our feet don't open fully, a lot of times we don't have access to the core, right? So if my tail can't relax, my ankles can't relax, if my quads can't relax, then my tail can't release, and then the front circumference core support doesn't activate, right? So open hips, open ankles, open knees allows deeper access to our core support, breath support. And then I'm going to do my toe sit here, so we'll see how this feels today. I also have an injury to my left ankle, so my right side could definitely be compensating the past few days. Right. And I want to acknowledge, like, I don't want my heels over in front of my toes. I'm going to walk my knees back so my heels are back. And what I'm going to do is, if my heels are rolling out, I want to roll them in underneath the sit bones. So I'm trying to find that alignment of where my sit bones. How do I draw my heels under sit bones? How do I walk my heels back? Where there's more load on the balls of my feet. They're connecting to the grounding energy and the ground lift energy. How do I feel this down the back, up the front, or maybe it's an up the front, down the back. And I'm going to just check in with my head and my neck because that gets really tight. And when I'm looking over a shoulder, I'm actually thinking of it coming from the opposite rib cage. And then coming back forward into all fours. Right, I'm going to send my heels back and down. I'm just kind of pausing to see what's available in the hamstrings. If I bend my left knee, I'm going to really keep my focus on the ball of that big toe, ball of the pinky toe mound. It's not just about dropping my weight in that right heel. I want to feel the integration, right? I want to feel that weight through the ball of the foot of the knee that's bending as well as weight on the other foot. So both feet are constantly sharing the load, just feels different. So my hips aren't dropping and collapsing. I'm staying connected to this downward energy, which gives me a tone, a lifted tone support. Connecting to in-breath. And keep feeling, especially the big toe mound, that a lot of people can lose contact there. And when you connect weight or load to the big toe mound, it wakes up the inner arches, inner ankles of the feet, which can wake up the pelvic floor, the internal spine core muscles. And I'm going to send my hips really far back. And my tail, my shoulder blade is going to drape between my legs so I have that support. Like this shoulder rotation, hip extension. So my left foot will kick out to the left side. My right, as it does that, my right leg is going to slide in line with my head. So this is an opportunity for me to feel load and opening of the shoulder girdle. Right? So instead of me just stretching the chest passively, I'm loading it to feel it open and how the arms are connected to each other. Okay. And then how does the load feel in my left knee? So I can even sit my hip back, find that backing from that hip hinge, that kind of lower glute, that sit bone that tracks down through the knee and out through the heel. And that will begin to open up the front of my hip. Okay. So two things that we need for extension. As I hip hinge, I want to find the back of the leg support, and then as the sit bone moves through the knee, heel reaches back, the inside of the hip, the femur, right, where it connects into the pelvis, begins to get integrated. Right? And the hip flexors can let go and open when there's support through the back of the leg. Find the pinky side of the hand, so we feel the back support here. That allows chest to open. Right, and then I can play in that position. Feeling the back of the leg support, feeling the hand and shoulder blade, which kind of gives me this wrap from back to front. Right. Some people like to float a leg up. If that makes you grip anywhere, you don't have to. And then from here, I'm going to use the weight of my arm, right, to help me come all the way up to tall kneeling. And then from tall kneeling, I'm going to reach this side of this arm up, so my left arm, of the knee I was just kneeling on. I'm going to think about that long tail, long back of the head. So we already did a side opening in all fours. Now we're just changing our relationship with gravity. I want to check in with how is this right leg supporting me. I'm not locked out in the knee, right? I'm really in the whole foot of the tripod. Whether that foot's turned out or in, feel a little support through this leg. So another option, I sometimes like this leg long. Sometimes I like to bend it. Right? And if I bring my forearm to my thigh, it really allows me to feel the load in my foot if my quad or knee's holding. Bringing the hand behind my head, and the elbow slightly folds in, so the shoulder blade on the back. Right. And that can allow me to feel my front ribs kind of soften in, and it allows me to get a little longer through the back of my head. Sending my left sit bone down, so there's activity through the back of the left leg. And I just want to integrate. I'm trying to integrate my head and my arm through the core into the legs. Okay. So thinking about that tail dropping, head floating. Good. And my hip hinge here, so my hips are going to slide back. Long tail, which gives me low belly support, so I have control of this movement. Right. And then I can play with some primal play, right? So different positions, that foot can turn in, it can turn out. Right? Loading, playing with the weight being shared in all four limbs. Right? So there's not a right or wrong. Is this yoga? Is it Pilates? Is it movement? Is it natural movement? All of those disciplines of movement are just that, right? They come from ancient ways of moving. So I just changed my position without even thinking. My body wanted to explore that on the other side. So basically I'm now already in this position. So my mind could say, go back to the sequence that you started, but I'm just gonna follow. I'm gonna follow this. So maybe I'll go backwards now. Okay. So I'm gonna feel some flow to the tripod of the foot. Right. What I find is if you have a quad that really holds, right, to really get to the support here, you've got to feel the foot opening, the tripod of the foot really feeling some weight. This leg is so much harder. I'm getting the inclination to bring my legs closer together. So again, how is my head and tail connected? Where's the pathway of that? And I'm going to really think of trying to occupy the back of my body. So when I turn my head, I'm sensing my hand, I'm sensing the back of my body. So I'm basically feeling my head turn from being in the back, which feels very different. Maybe I add a reach of the arm. Okay. I want to reverse that, playful. I have my foot on my surfboard, which actually is really good. So having a wall or an objects there are like external cues, right? That feels really supportive for some really tight adductors that I tend to have a pattern of. Okay. Now, as I go back to the side, we're going to go to the right side now. I'm going to use my left leg and arm as a counterweight. So I'm going to hip hinge first, so I can find those low glute upper hamstring, the place where the femur and the pelvis meet, that support. So I can bring the hips forward as long as I don't lose that support. Right? And I'm going to drop this arm down, counterweight until I slowly connect. So I'll come in a little bit, so that you can see. So here I want to find, watch locking your elbow. So especially I have a lot of hyperextension. I'm going to soften this elbow. See how that changes? So if I lock my elbow, but if I soften it and connect to my hand, you see my head lifts just slightly. Here's a locked elbow, which means the arm is not integrating into the core. Right? So if I soften my elbow, that helps my palm connect. And then my arm gets rooted in through the shoulder girdle, through the shoulder blade, through the rib cage. And it actually releases tension in my neck to have an open pathway of my hand to my core. Yeah. And then I'm going to play with arm to arm connection. So if I'm paddling out, or the activity that I'm doing, I need both of my arms. And that's usually like living. The more I can feel the integration of the arms, how they are not separate. Right? We think of left and right, but they actually are just one working entity. Right? My shoulder blades are going to kind of, on the exhale, they're going to waterfall down. I'm going to feel that right knee weight. Try to feel the support of that right back of the leg. Right. Now I'm feeling some gripping in my neck. So that lift of the leg wasn't useful for me. Right. And then to come back, there's a rib cage. This is thoracic rib cage mobility. So you're not just getting really good opening of the chest and the connection of the back body, but I'm also, there's a moment I get some really good rib cage, some thoracic mobility. So we don't often think about rib cage mobility, but it is so important. Most neck and shoulder tightness, or a lot of shoulder, neck, and tightness and hip tightness comes from the lack of the rib cage mobility. Then I'm gonna rotate that foot in and bring the knee in. So I could literally go squaring the hips, and then I'm rotating from my back body. Ribs up, ribs down. So it's kind of like thread the needle, which I'll do now. Long reaching tail, long reaching head, feeling that the ribs spiral. So my left rib cage is gonna help my left arm reach and thread through. I want to feel weight in my knees and the back of my legs. My elbow can bend as I feel more access through the ribs. Really long through your tail until you feel the kind of lift of the low belly. So knees equally ground to feel that lift of low belly. So I'm actually gaining more range as my body finds support of this movement. So if I want to hold that stretch or that position, I'm going to call it a position, I want to feel tone and support. So I'm going to kind of hug my knees in, grounding, feel the support through the legs. I'm going to gently ground through the top of my hand, and then my right shoulder blade is going to waterfall. So I'm going to feel some side rib support here. And that's going to allow me to slide my left hand out in front. And with my left hand out in front, I'm also going to gently connect my palm into the ground. And as I press my left palm into the ground, I want to track the tone through the shoulder blade. And here's my upper core. Upper core turns on, and then I just got a little bit more natural rotation. Don't lose the connection of your knees and the back of the legs to the ground. Good. And as I'm ready to come up, I want to connect my points of contact. Back of the hand, hug maybe the knees and ground the knees. So I'm never collapsing on my head and slowly coming up. I'll do that on the other side. I'll face this way. Long reaching tail, long through the back of the head. You feel that left rib cage wrapping around to the front. I want to feel my right rib cage wrapping around to the front. So if the side's tighter, you may want to just stay here. How do I feel the energy down the back? And a low core support as my knees kind of ground and hug in. My upper core support as the back of the left palm gently presses in. It's not a press, it's more of like, it's grounding, but it is feeling a load that creates tone in the shoulder blade and the rib cage. And then if that's available, I'll slide my right arm forward. I'm going to connect to, I'm going to feel the load, kind of just suctioning downward, and arms kind of draw into the body as I press down. And I just got like 4 pops there. Not my goal, but I felt some openings. And then sitting back to heel sit. Woo. We're going to come to seated for a moment and just do a little bit of head. So I'm feeling a lot of tension in my neck from yesterday. Just kind of going into trying to sense from my back body. Most of us are shifted in our front body. Can I sense the width of my ribs? So if I want to think of creating some space or length through the left side of the neck, I want to track that, right? So it's connected. Our head is connected, our neck is connected all the way down, right? So there's deep spine support tissue, right? The muscles connect through fascia, which connect all the way to the pelvic floor. So for me right now, when I bring my head to the side, I really feel the restriction through the back of my ribs. If I try to sense both of my sit bones and my tail weight, it starts to bring me lower into the back. And I'm just going to try to feel the diaphragm expanding as you inhale. Diaphragm expanding, kind of forward and down. Maybe in the back of the ribs. There's lots of ways we can breathe that help create opening. So it could be more diaphragmatic and belly breathing. Right? Taught a lot of that in my yoga practices. And Pilates, there's a lot of rib cage. Right? So in dynamic movement, we need the abdominals to contract, right? And if the abdominal is contracting, then the diaphragm can't drop down, right? So then how do you breathe? So especially if I'm in a lot of extension, the more I can feel breath in my rib cage, because my abdominals are on the stretch, so it's really hard to breathe down into your belly. And if we're not breathing, right, we're also creating more tension. We're not breathing fully. We're all breathing. So I'm going to track. I'm going to find both my sit bones. Where's the back weight of my tail? And that just shifted me back slightly. And when I shifted back, I felt a natural tone here. I didn't have to pull my abdominals in. I'm going to let that right shoulder blade cascade down. I'm feeling a little stretch here. That's okay. I want to just make sure the stretch is supported by down below. So that I want my muscles to lengthen with support, because that's functional. I just hang out in a passive stretch. My nervous system is not going to know how to access that in daily movement. Okay. So I want to keep tracking the connections of my neck support. What's supporting my neck? So if I want my tension to free up here, right, what down below is contributing to neck tension? Right? Or what behind you, maybe a lack of awareness of back body, being in your back body, which that creates support of the head, up the front. So whether I'm over efforting or not enough in my side body, so if I turn my head, which is a common movement I need to do in surfing, in extension, especially when I'm sitting, right, I'm looking over my shoulder to see when the waves are coming. Surfboard is actually a great way, or if you, or horseback riding, or any type of movement where you're sitting and your sit bones are rounded. If I think about how do I sense my left sit bone and looking over the right side of my shoulder, right, rotation of my head starts to come from somewhere much deeper. And there's my core support in that, right? And then I get more rotation naturally versus just using my head to look over my shoulder. This is my limitation here. But when I find my sit bone and I feel some core support, rotation of my head actually gets integrated into the ribs. Right, so I'm going to try that again, and you can play with the difference of just looking over your left shoulder from your head and neck, not integrated. Right? Or then refining what's your in range. Find the length of the inner ear, the length of the tail, just that incorporates core on a deeper level, like breath, deeper core. And then if I try to feel the weight of my right sit bone, right, that just cued my ribs. I didn't turn. I just got so much more ability to see behind me because my ribs, and it moved from the back, like a back wrap, which is such a great nutritious movement. Rotation, when we're in a lot of extension, or even if you're in a lot of flexion, just kind of sitting back in my back body, connecting to breath, And I'm just sensing the opposite sit bone. Not that all my weight is there. There's equal weight, but finding the back body, finding the sit bones, finding the length of the tail, length of the back of the head, and that rotation. And I'm just going to slowly begin to walk forward. Hips can get tight. I want to cut this video short because I'm ready to go surf now. So if I'm just kind of doing a little bit of a hip opener here, again, I want to feel the weight of the tail, lift of the head, so that might be too far. I want to make sure my neck feels supported. I'm kind of feeling some load through my legs, through my shins. Finding my back body, finding the jowl in my tail. Doesn't have to be the biggest ranges of motion here. I always think more of integration, especially as a very dynamic athlete. So that for me opened my right hip, so I'm going to bring my left foot forward. I'm going to feel that load. Feel my shoulder blades and my tail waterfall down, which gives me this little feeling of tone through the low belly. So I don't want to go, I can already feel my left glute, right, and hips, maybe even some inner thigh here opening. If I go further, which I can, because I'm flexible, I'm hypermobile, but it's going to cut me off. I'm not going to be able to feel the relationship of the leg to the spine to the head through the hip if I overstretch. So I'm always trying to find head to tail, feeling that gravity just kind of cascade down the tail, creating a lift through the belly, sensing some load through the shins and the feet. So my toes just kind of activated as I was sensing, right? And that just turned on the back of my hip a little bit and gave me a little more access to the floor. So this side may want to move in a similar, right? I could find that down the back, which is 2 directions of the spine. Maybe I want some rotation there, maybe not. Finding breath in those back ribs, side ribs. Maybe even the diaphragmatic breath could be in the belly, the front of the rib cage. Dropping the tail down. Relaxing it up, dropping it down. This is just what this side of the body wants. So this would then kind of turn into, that's more of, if you've heard the word somatic movement, when we really tune in, so the more we practice moving with awareness, we can begin to cultivate this inner coaching, this inner body wisdom that will route you through movement patterns. So it's really good, it's great to have Pilates, yoga, movement therapy exercises as a platform, and the more we go inward and practice with the awareness and how it feels, the body begins to create its own movement practice for you, which is the way it reorganizes and self-heals itself. So I hope this was helpful, not too far out there. I'm missing surf, but I have done good things for my body. I think I've done enough restorative movement today, and I will do probably more when I'm done. Have a beautiful day.